Washington Journal continues.
Well, now joining us from Moody's Analytic headquarters in Westchester, Pennsylvania, is economist Sohini Chowdhury. We want to talk about some of the economic impacts of the natural disasters that this country has experienced in the past couple of months, particularly the flooding in the Mississippi River Basin. Sohini Chowdhury, how large is the economy of the Mississippi River Basin? How would you describe that economic area?
So, Mississippi, the economy of Mississippi is one of the poorest states. The Mississippi per capita income is the lowest in the country. And its GDP, which is around 90 billion, is 0.7% of the national GDP.
So but what about the Mississippi River Basin, you know, where it's been flooding?
Yeah, so the states that have been affected have been at the South River Basin, so which is south of Cairo, Illinois. So there you have Tennessee. Memphis is the only major city to have been affected. Most of the other areas have been rural so far. So down from Tennessee you have Missouri and then Mississippi and Louisiana, of course.
Okay, so what would you, if somebody, for a macro impact of the flooding that occurred there recently, how would you describe it?
So the industries that have been, so the first thing is that the numbers are still trickling in because the flood waters haven't yet receded completely, so the damages are still being computed. But in terms of industries that have been affected, first would be croplands, because most of the area is rural, so croplands have been severely impacted. And then, of course, because you have the river is an important form of transportation, especially grains, from farms in the Midwest to down at the Gulfport, from where they are exported out of the U.S. So traffic along the river, barge traffic, shipping, those industries have been affected, and then the hospitality industry, which are the casinos along the river. So this is where the impacts are limited to.
Now, have we seen an increase in commodity prices, such as corn, etc., because of this massive flooding?
Yes, there have been supply effects, supply shocks, definitely, because crops have been damaged. In Arkansas, for example, rice fields, then Tennessee also has seen flooding, farms have been inundated with flood waters. But the good thing is that we believe that these effects would be temporary, just because most of these farms are insured. So although there would be temporary shocks in the sense that farmers would have to replant all these crops, so that would be, you know, some loss in time and stuff like that. But it won't be a long-term effect strong enough to push up commodity prices.
Sohini Chowdhury, what about shipping on the Mississippi, and particularly when we get down to the New Orleans port? How has that been affected economically because of the flooding?
So that was a very big concern. Barge traffic had been affected. So around 600 barges move up and down the Mississippi River on a given day, on average. And more than half of U.S. grain exports are moved from the Midwest farms, and then they are exported into grain elevators, and they go out into Canada, Asia, and Europe. For a day at least, barge traffic was limited just because of these very high currents. And people were also fearing that the wakes generated from the barges would put additional pressure on the levees. But that limited interruption did some damage to the economy. But because it was just a limited interruption, it was fine. But it had the potential to do a lot of damage, just the transportation along the river.
Well, Sohini Chowdhury is an economist with Moody's, and she is joining us for the next 20 minutes or so to talk about the economic impact of some of the natural disasters we've experienced. 202 is the area code, 624-1111 for Democrats, 1115 for Republicans, and 624-0760 for independents. Now, if you have been in one of these recent natural disasters. We would like to get your perspective as well. We're talking about the economic impact of these natural disasters. 737-2579 is the number for you to call. Sohini Chaudhuri, you've talked about the temporary effect of this natural disaster in the Mississippi Basin. How temporary, and if you had to put a price tag, a full price tag on how much this is going to cost the U.S. economy, what would that be?
The price tag is difficult, but so far temporary estimates suggest that the loss to the entire region would be something to the tune of $6 billion US dollars. But given the kind of forecasting and estimates that we do at Moody's, I would say that the effects would be temporary, so it would the economies along that area would be back on normal track in the next quarter or so. The reason being that the national economy is recovering. So for example, the casinos had closed. They had been closed for a month. They started reopening during the Memorial Day weekend. So there is a significant amount of tax revenue losses if these casinos, especially the ones in the Tunica region, they are closed. But given, like we had forecasted, these would be short-term effects. The casinos have started reopening and national income and confidence is rising, so people will once again start flocking to these casinos. And once the flood waters completely recede, we believe that the economies will be back on track very quickly.
Sohini Chaudhuri, can you also comment on the effect of a tornado such as the one that went through Joplin, Missouri recently, the economic impact of that?
So there were tornadoes in Joplin, Missouri, and then Mississippi itself, that entire region, Alabama, Mississippi, North Carolina, they had all these tornadoes during April. So people have estimated that losses from those tornadoes, including insured and uninsured, would be like $10 billion US dollars. But again, we believe that like the floods, they would be temporary. Couple of reasons. One important reason that we at Moody's believe is that unlike earlier, like maybe 20 years back, people now have a better system in place to take care of these floods and tornadoes. So it's not like they are happening for the first time. That region is tornado prone. So there definitely will be short-term effects. One positive upside might be an increase in construction, which would definitely be beneficial to the national economy as a whole, given that the economy is still recovering. Homes have been destroyed, so an increase in construction activity would really help and would actually be an upside to the economy.
Let's take some calls. Reading, Connecticut. Jennifer, you are first up. Please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, my comment is, yes, these are quoted natural disasters, but how much of these natural quote-unquote disasters are impacted by climate change? I don't hear anybody really speaking to climate change on a national level. I don't hear C-SPAN talking about it, I don't think. I don't hear the mainstream media talking about climate change. It's out there. It's happening today. It's been going on for years. And we've got to take care of some concerns about climate change. Newsweek has a very interesting cover piece this week, June 6th date, Weather Panic. It's the cover story. This is the new normal, and we're hopefully prepared.
Sohini Chaudhuri, is this something that you study?
Yeah. So yeah, as an economist, I probably can't talk a lot about what the causes are of these tornadoes, but definitely this particular year, especially in April, we have seen a record number of tornadoes all over the country. And today morning you had tornadoes in Springfield, Massachusetts, in western Massachusetts. So definitely this particular year, there is something going on. Climate change is probably one of the reasons, global warming, but unfortunately I really can't talk in details about why the tornadoes are happening.
Sohini Chaudhuri, let's go back to how much cropland has been lost during the flooding?
Yeah, so in Mississippi, around $200 million of loss of damage from croplands has been estimated.
And that's an annual loss at this point? I mean, because it's grown every year?
No. This is just the loss from the flooding, from the 1 month of flooding so far. once the waters totally recede, then the number is going to increase. And agriculture in Mississippi is like a $2.2 billion industry. Earlier, agriculture was an even more important part of the economy because of cotton. That was the major cash crop from the 1830s to the Second World War. But now the economy is a lot more diversified. Manufacturing is there, but even in manufacturing, most of the manufacturing industries like food processing and stuff, they depend upon agriculture. So loss so far has been $200 million. In Arkansas, it is to the tune of $500 million.
Next call for our guest from Moody's, Columbus, Georgia. Sue, Independent Line.
I was listening to the global warming question, the economical effect of global warming. How much does it cost for our president to fly from Washington to circle over that area? Does he just to look and see what's done? What is the cost?
Do you know what, Sue? I don't think that's our guest, Sohini Chaudhuri, can address. Again, we're talking about the economic impact of the natural disasters that the U.S. has faced recently. Atlanta, Thomas, you are on the air. Good morning.
Yes, I was calling about the floods and everything.
Yes, sir.
We know that as well as just like in Japan, that HARP and Digicon are involved with that, and they're intentionally flooding the Mississippi River and caused all this food to be ruined, and they want to have a deep water port or a NAFTA highway all the way up there, and they're intentionally doing all this stuff, and then Obama's going to come down and look like the savior after it's all over with and try and get reelected. If you go to wasobamaborninkenya.com, you can see his real birth certificate.
Sohini Chaudhuri, we have this tweet here. Toyota plant in Mississippi got big tax breaks and will not open. Are you familiar with this situation, and whether or not this is one that's related to the flooding?
Could you repeat that question, Peter? Sorry, I missed you.
There's a Toyota plant in Mississippi that got big tax breaks. This is the tweet that we got from a viewer, and will not open. Are you familiar with this Toyota plant and whether or not it's related to the flooding?
No, actually not.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, the tornadoes are related to the flooding. I mean, that's true because it's this particular storm system which resulted in the tornadoes and resulted in rainfalls and therefore the flooding. So they are all interlinked. But yes, regarding the tornado plant, I am not familiar with that.
Next call for Sohini Chaudhuri, an economist with Moody's, talking about the economic impact of natural disasters. John, Fairfax, Virginia. Hi, John.
Good morning, Peter, Ms. Sidori, and everybody listening. You can't really predict tornadoes, but you can predict floods, and thank God for the spillways and floodplains. My suggestion is that we need to prepare for the future, and part of that could be in these floodplains to dig out areas to flood and use that dirt to create areas to live on, so that there would be only crop damage when they open these up. And this can be done anywhere there is potential flooding. Create a reservoir to take the flooding when it occurs, and then pump the water from there to people that need it elsewhere.
Sohini Chaudhuri.
Yeah, Peter, I just got a few words about the spillways and croplands. So if you could just summarize his question for me.
You know what? It was pretty complicated, and it was pretty long. I'm not sure that I could do it justice, so I apologize. Are you having trouble with your audio?
I can hear you fine. It's just that some of the callers
go in and out.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, for the last 20 minutes, our guest has been Sohini Chaudhuri. She is an economist with Moody's in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and we've been talking about the economic impact of natural disasters. One of the things that last viewer did talk about, Sohini, was that you can't predict tornadoes.
Right.
What has been the cost to the insurance industry of all of this?
The cost has been pretty high, pretty significant. After Katrina, for example, the insurance industry went bankrupt, totally bankrupt. So that is definitely a big concern for the industry. Like, I can't put a number to that, but it is definitely a very, very significant amount.
We appreciate your being on the Washington Journal this morning.